Hi, everybody. This is Alan Fine, and I'm here with Bill Zucker, who's the Vice President, Public Relations for Holland America Lines. We are here in New York on the latest Rotterdam 7, for the 150th anniversary celebration of the ship's crossing from the Netherlands to New York. And this is Insider Travel Report. You were just on this crossing?
Yeah, it was a wonderful voyage. We left Rotterdam on exactly the date 150 years after our very first voyage. So our first voyage took place 150 years ago. It went from Rotterdam to Plymouth in England to New York City, and we did that same voyage again. We added
October 15th.
Correct. And we added one more stop, but we retraced that voyage. And through the course of the voyage, we learned a lot about it. So there were lectures every day from Bill Miller, who's a cruise historian, on all of the aspects of how people cruised in those early days. We spent some time before we started cruising in Rotterdam, at the archives and other places where our history began and still exists and is chronicled throughout. And there were a lot of fun touches. So there was a happy hour every day with Dutch
I heard about that.
drinks, and it was a throwback. So drinks were 25 to 75 cents, a little more like what they were at other times. There were menus throughout the cruise that were throwback menus. And so our culinary team went back and looked at menus dating back as far as the 1920s and said, how can we create those dishes in a way that will still work with our kitchens today, with people's palates today? And it was delicious. They came up with great stuff, great menus.
We spoke to Rudy, your executive chef, and he was saying that there are no pictures, so they had to decide how to present the plates.
Yeah, from what I understand, they did their best to decipher these menus. They had the menus.
The menus, not the recipe, so they had to do the forensics.
Yeah, and honestly, to me, looking at some of the dishes, I'm not a culinary expert, it looked like the biggest difference tended to be around what was either along the side of it or the sauces. And that's where it seemed that they had gone and used an old sauce, one I wouldn't have been familiar with, things like that. But it was just a nice touch. Seeing even just the menus written that way made you feel like you were cruising in another era.
But you had the comforts of today, and the whole trip long you're thinking about what it must have been like, and it culminates with you coming into New York and seeing the Statue of Liberty?
Yeah, so two things. So the comforts of now versus then, as sometimes happens on transatlantic voyages, we hit a couple of days of heavy seas, which was not a big deal because we're on a big ship with stabilizers, and we have the technology that makes that a pretty comfortable cruise. As the captain pointed out, that much smaller Rotterdam 1 without those stabilizers would have been bouncing around a lot, and that was the story for a lot of refugees or immigrants who came over in those early days. They had to go through some pretty rough times.
Let's stop for a moment and let the listener realize that the Rotterdam and certainly Holland America is responsible for so many immigrants coming to our country, not just safely, but in almost a style that no one else was giving.
So importantly, when Holland America Line started taking immigrants over 150 years ago, there was recognition that it was important to do that in a way that kept them healthy. Mm-hmm. So, if you see our origin story next time you cruise with us, you'll see the story of how we introduced 3 meals a day for immigrant class so that they would get out of their rooms, the rooms could be cleaned, and they would get the health of 3 meals.
Which was not the norm at the time.
But later, when Ellis Island was introduced and the concept of having to pass health exams and things like that, it became really important because if an immigrant was rejected, obviously it meant that their dreams were quashed, but it also meant for Holland America Line that we needed to bring them back. And so there was a good incentive on both ends of that to make sure that our passengers were healthy. And as Gus said in his remarks today, that's something we have kept throughout. Service, taking care of our guests, making sure, back in those days that everyone was healthy, these days that they're healthy but also having fun. That's something that our crew takes very seriously.
Right. So you arrive in New York and you go by the Statue of Liberty and you think what it must have meant to the people back 150 years ago. Tell us about that, and also let's talk about how New York is celebrating with us.
So in terms of coming in today, it was probably about 5:45 in the morning. It was very dark. Sunrise isn't until about 7:15. And they opened up the bow of the ship so we could all go out and watch as the statue got closer. And it was really inspiring. I've seen the Statue of Liberty before, but I've never seen the Statue of Liberty after having crossed the Atlantic. And it certainly made me think about all of those people, including my ancestors who came over. And that was the sight. And it was hard to see. It was a very foggy morning. Everyone wanted to see it because you wanted that feeling, that recognition that we had made it, just like so many others had before then. It was especially appropriate because we recently created a partnership with the Statue of Liberty and Ellis Island Foundation. It really makes so much sense. About 1 in 10 immigrants that came through Ellis Island had come from one of our ships. So the foundation is going to create an exhibit at Ellis Island that will be around from about January through April, when we have our actual anniversary, and that exhibit will highlight the connection between Ellis Island and those who immigrated on Holland America Line, some famous people who immigrated, as well as just great details about what they all had to go through. It was not easy. For all the glamour we talk about, it was rough. It was a tough voyage. It was tough to go through the process at Ellis Island, and so they will highlight that. And also on our ships, we'll have some videos next year with Ellis Island explaining our story, so that our guests, as they sail with us, can watch that from their staterooms.
That's great. And also today's a special day in New York.
So the borough president of Manhattan joined us on board today and made a proclamation and recognized that this is Holland America Line Appreciation Day in the borough of Manhattan. And he cited, obviously, all that we are connected towards with immigration and our time here. It was really nice that he took the time to come on board to make that proclamation, and on behalf of all of the people of Manhattan, to recognize the connection that we have with New York City.
So this transatlantic crossing isn't the last one. And any travel advisor that has clients that want to do a transatlantic, maybe sample some of the historic dishes and menus and drinks. When's the next one?
So in April, we will do this voyage in reverse. It will go from New York City, then to the UK, and then to Rotterdam. The ship will arrive in Rotterdam on our actual anniversary. So we have two anniversaries.
Right, you do.
This is the anniversary of the first crossing that we did. We became a company about 6 months later, and so that's what we're celebrating in April. So the ship will arrive. It will do an overnight in Rotterdam, and we will be celebrating all along the way, and we'll also be celebrating in Rotterdam. Rotterdam was our original home, and so the people of Rotterdam are going to join our guests to wish us a happy 150th. The voyage itself will have some of the same aspects of this voyage, so the throwback happy hours, some unique lectures, some great entertainment, the throwback menus that'll be featured in it as well. So yeah, I would say if anyone is looking for a good reason to dig a little deeper into Holland America Line and to have some fun, and maybe wants to go to Europe on a transatlantic, that's definitely a voyage to consider.
That's great. Thank you for sharing that with us.
You bet. Thank you.
And this is Alan Fine for Insider Travel Report.